Horror is a genre video games uniquely excel at, given their interactive nature. Most use the medium to put you in the shoes of a would-be victim at the mercy of a menacing force. Rarely is the player put in a position where they themselves act as the one that's doing harm onto others. Yes, many games may let you be bad, but it's often player choice in RPGs, or completely vapid in a sandbox. Few games demand you knowingly participate in sadistic actions. I chose today's titles because they each approach the idea of forcing players to participate in uncomfortable acts, but take wildly different routes to get there. Named Mojave by Stargazer Studios, and Horses by Andrea Bellera and Santa Regina. The former feels inspired by trashy, obscure horror movies, while the latter is overwhelmingly harkening back to silent films. Both are linear first-person horror games that have you performing questionable actions at the request of an unstable, threatening character. Both are around movie length. Neither are for those looking for a light, cozy evening. I originally stumbled upon Named Mojave when I was looking for one last game to round up my Steam Summer Next Fest video. My eyes were glazing over, staring at the hundreds of games to pick from, when this one caught my eye. The strange title and cover art drew me in like a fascinating B-movie sitting on a video rental shelf. And like any good B-movie, I turned it on expecting some cheap, amusing thrills, only to find it more interesting than many higher-profile titles. However, also like many B-movies, it does tend to lull in a few places and has some light padding to extend an already brief runtime. But there are certainly more peaks than valleys, and even then, there's shallow valleys. When your car breaks down in the middle of nowhere desert, you investigate a local property for help. Following a massive blood trail leads you to a murder house occupied by a naked anthropomorphic cat named Mojave. He agrees to give you a new car battery after you bring him back some trophies from neighboring properties. So begins a series of quests to meet the other strange and twisted inhabitants of the desert and collect them for your new feline friend. The desert is a cruel place. You will be crueler. You will see things you don't understand, but you know all that you need to. You will ask, why am I doing this, as you refuse to stop. Why should you stop? If you get what you want, that's all that matters. And you know what? I got what I wanted. I value games that fill a short runtime with as many interesting ideas and scenarios as possible, where by the time you've taken in what's happening, you're already moving on to the next section. The game is broken into 7 chapters. Each one is a very distinct scenario with its own characters, setting, and situation. They are not long chapters, ranging anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes, for an experience that's under 2 hours long. I found most of these scenarios to be very compelling, and I was hooked all the way through, but there were a couple of chapters I am less enthusiastic about. The corn maze was kind of annoying, and the basement feels like every horror game you've ever played. I don't think these sections are strictly bad, but stick out as typical horror game tropes in a game that is otherwise very atypical. The game is overtly absurd and firmly in the realm of horror comedy. I personally found it more freaky than funny, but I wouldn't argue with anyone who thought otherwise. Gameplay is hardly worth discussing. There is a game, but do not mistake it for a shooter. There are a few puzzles, but you'll be able to solve them no problem. It's about the experience of spending a day in this bizarre, forgotten part of America that should have stayed forgotten. Named Mojave is available on Steam for $10 USD. While 2025 has been an incredible year for game releases, especially in the indie space, it's also been a very worrying one. Payment processors decided to start taking issue with explicit content on a whim, which caused various storefronts like Steam and itch.io to walk on eggshells as to not upset the companies that allow them to transfer money. This sudden and severe attitude change is part of the reason I'm assuming that some of these platforms decided to ban horses. This has stirred up quite a controversy around the game, as Steam banned it near release with very little explanation given to the developers. This sort of behavior is bad, full stop. Especially since there are far more graphic and offensive content already on the platform. Now, of no fault of the game or the devs, but a story like that makes you think this must be some sort of super messed up shock value piece, when in reality it's much closer to what happened with Hatred back in the day, where controversy gets stirred up around a game that's really no more explicit than Grand Theft Auto's been for decades. The game itself definitely contains disturbing themes and images, such as rape, necrophilia, dehumanization, and syringes filled with bad things, and it's fairly direct about what's happening, but honestly I've been more disturbed by certain South Park episodes. It may make you a little uncomfortable, but it's a horror game. That's what you're supposed to be. You play as a young man sent to work his job on a secluded horse farm to learn some discipline. As you might have noticed, those are not horses. Who they are and why they are here is what you will be uncovering over the next 2 weeks, in between performing your daily chores at the behest of the farmer. The most apparent thing when looking at this game is the art style. The black and white colors, lack of sound effects, constant hum of a film projector, bizarre close-up of people's faces, the text cards whenever they speak, the live-action FMVs whenever you perform certain actions. It all shows a strong, overwhelming commitment to the silent film aesthetic. But what about the story? I'm a little torn on that matter. I think I liked it. I certainly didn't hate it. One may be tempted to think that it will all be a bunch of vague artsy metaphors, but no. The story is actually quite clear, and questions do have answers. I was mostly satisfied with it, but I do question some of the thematic consistency and creative decisions. For example, the game does have some very brief moments of levity that feel out of place in a game that is decidedly unfun, and the pixelation really feels like a compromise. The game does so much to show you how far these people have been stripped of their dignity and humanity to where they are treated worse than animals, but showing a breast or a penis is too far. However, given how storefronts have reacted, and the fact the devs are still trying to sell a product, I suppose it's fair. The game still left a positive impression on me. Gameplay is almost completely irrelevant. Every day you'll be given a list of chores, and you accomplish them by clicking on an object to pick it up, and clicking on a different object to put it down, usually accompanied by a short live-action video. These chores are very simple, tedious, brief, and often interrupted by story beats. It's closer to a movie than a game, which is appropriate. Is this a game I would recommend to people? I think I would, if only because I think it would make for an interesting 2 to 3 hour play session. I've played worse games that costed more, which is probably the nicest thing I could say about it. Horses is available on GOG, Humble Bundle, and itch.io for $5 USD. I think both of these games are interesting. Named Mojave appeals more to my taste, but I think Horses might be the more intriguing game, even ignoring the kerfuffle around it. I don't think either are masterpieces of the medium, but they are unique, unsettling, and willing to take creative risk. I'll take less than stellar games that swing for the fences over the safe, sanded down products that make me feel nothing. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Games are a form of art. Art is supposed to make you feel something, and I certainly felt something playing these two. I love indie games, and while I can't possibly play all of them, I love seeing what smaller devs are putting out. If you know of an indie game that would appeal to the same audience as these, please discuss it in the comments below. Word of mouth can be a powerful tool to help pull a title from obscurity, and I'm sure the devs would appreciate it too.